Hi, I'm Mairi from Change is Always Possible, and I want to tell you a little story today. And it's about a doctor called Ignaz Semmelweis, who was Hungarian, and he worked in the Vienna maternity hospital in the 1840s. And this smart man, who is even studied in philosophy because of his methodical approach, um, discovered something really important that is proving to be vital at this current point of time and crisis on our planet. So, what happened was Ignaz noticed that in the maternity hospital, the um, mothers were dying at a rate 5 times that more in the doctors' and medical students' maternity wards than the wards that were run by the midwives. And being a logical, methodical doctor, he decided to try and find out why. And so he set about crunching the numbers and observing what was happening. So he tried various things to make a difference, which included in the midwives' wards, they put the women on their sides to give birth. So he tried that in the doctors' wards. It didn't make any difference to the death rate. He then noticed that in the doctors' wards, when somebody had died, the priest would come through the ward ringing a bell, and he hypothesised that that was perhaps traumatic to the other women in the ward, and so he stopped that happening. Still didn't make any difference. And it wasn't until, so this was from 1840 to 1846, he was trying to figure out what was going on. And then around, I think it was around 1847, a colleague of his died of the same fever, which they called childbed fever, as the women were dying of. And this made him look into things a bit more. What was different? What had happened with this doctor? And what he discovered was that the medical doctors in the mornings were doing autopsies on the women who had died the day before. And then they were going to the maternity wards to help deliver babies. And his hypothesis was there was something in those dead bodies that was being transferred. He thought it was dead material to the women and causing them to get the fever and die. And so he introduced the idea of people washing their hands with a chlorine solution, which he thought would cover up the smell of the dead material. And so that happened, and there was a vast improvement in the death rate when the doctors did this. So they did start washing their hands with the chlorine solution for some time. However, Ignaz, it turns out, was apparently a bit of a difficult man, and he was really extolling his ideas. And some of the doctors got upset because they didn't like what they felt was being accused of causing harm, that they were somehow responsible for what was happening to these women. And what transpired was that gradually the hand-washing fell out of favour, and poor old Ignaz, who went around Europe trying to convince doctors, ended up mentally unwell and in an asylum, and sadly died when he was only 47. And what is interesting about this is that around the same time, so about 1860, Florence Nightingale, who most of us will know about, she was also extolling the virtues of washing your hands, and even wrote a pamphlet about it. And there was another doctor in America who was also suggesting the same thing. But despite all that, the practice of washing your hands was not adopted until much, much later. And maybe primarily thanks to doctors like Dr. Lister, who was studying infectious diseases and brought in hand washing, and of course it made a huge difference in surgery. And gradually We all adopted it, and it's the thing that we are being told over and over and over again to do now. So I think that's a very interesting story for many reasons. One, it's nice to know where did this all come from, and that Ignaz should get some accolade now for what he inadvertently discovered, and could have saved many, many lives. But because he was ridiculed and because doctors found it hard to hear what he was saying, we didn't actually adopt the practices till a long time later. So I think that what that story shows us is that we need to be very, very careful about the things that we just dismiss out hand because they challenge our current way of thinking. It may be that in some of the things that are being questioned and challenged at the moment regarding what is happening with the coronavirus on the planet, maybe some of the doctors speaking out about it, maybe they know something that the rest of us, including doctors, haven't caught up with yet. And I just think that we need to be very careful about dismissing out of hand the people in the world who, and yes, that does include me sometimes, who speak up about things, who challenge the norm, who question what's going on. Because in actual fact, these are often like Ignaz, the person that had a gift to offer us, but we weren't able to listen.